Welcome everyone, and hello, good evening, good morning, wherever you are watching us for another Customer Insights webinar. And today we have a very special guest, Simon Graham is here with us, and we have prepared for you some very interesting subjects. But before we go there, let me introduce myself. For those of you who don't know me, I am Maya. I'm the Marketing Communications Manager here at Solibri. And together with me, we have Ken Good, who is our Customer Success Manager. Ken is joining us today, and he will be able to answer any of your questions related to Solibri at the end of our webinar. So if you have any questions at any time, please drop them in the questions section or the chat section, and we will get back to you after Simon has presented. And please, I would like to ask you to specify if your questions are for Ken or for Simon, if it's for Solibri or for Opencore, Ken or Simon. So let us know, and we will be happy to answer your questions. We have a very packed agenda for today, but before we start with our presentation with Simon, we would like to ask you some questions just to get to know you better and to know your level of knowledge about Solibri. So please let us know if you use Solibri, and if you do, which product do you use? Do you use Solibri Office, so mainly working with the rules and customizing rule sets and things like that, or are you only using Solibri as a viewing tool, which is Solibri Anywhere, or do you use Solibri Inside, which is our latest product available inside the authoring tools, ArchiCAD, Vectorworks, and Allplan? Or you're new to Solibri? Okay, I see that more than 70% has voted. I will give you a couple more seconds. And now I'm closing. So 75% voted, and we have a very strong usage of Solibri Office for the rules. So that's great. We will mostly be focusing on that during our presentation, and I'm happy to see that we have new people here who have not used Solibri before. So we hope that this session will give a good introduction of how you can use Solibri with some examples. Okay, so here we have another question for you to understand from which industry or discipline you have joined us today. So is it architectural, structural, civil, infrastructure, or something else? And please, if you answer other, drop in the chat your comments on the type of industry that you're joining us from. All right, giving a couple of seconds more. We have more than 70% voting, and we have also a very strong lead with the architectural industry. So welcome everyone. It's great to get to know you. And without further ado, I would like to give Simon the stage. So here you go, Simon.
Thanks for the introduction, Maya. Thanks very much. Hi, everybody. Can everyone see my screen okay, first of all?
Actually, I cannot see it, Simon.
Okay, how about now?
That's
yes.
There
Now
we
we
go.
can.
Okay. Well, first of all, thanks for taking the time to join us today. Today, we're going to be talking about design and build coordination. And I'm going to be looking at how to get as much value as we can out of our BIM data. So just a quick introduction. My name's Simon Graham. I'm the Director of Opencore Limited. That's a BIM and information management consultancy I founded this year. One of my aims is to sort of try and democratize BIM and try and get more people using it. I've been working in the construction industry for 17 years, almost entirely in a BIM capacity, and I've used Solibri for a big portion of that time. So I'm here today to show you how I've used Solibri not just to fulfill BIM project requirements, but also use it to reduce time and cost required to resolve design, coordination, and build issues. And a happy side effect of doing that has been making the lives and jobs of project teams a little bit easier. But first, I just wanted to provide a bit of context to the challenges facing the construction industry today. So these are some of the challenges facing us at the moment in the built environment sectors. So I'll just give you a moment to digest those. We've got to implement these new requirements without losing momentum. We don't exactly get time to sit around and think about how we're going to do stuff. We're all busy. We've all got live projects, stuff being built. We need to think and implement things as we're working. So some of these challenges you can see have come from external factors, such as new legislation. We have new safety legislation in the UK. I'm sure if you're viewing from other countries, you have similar directives. The last point there where I've said that BIM specialists have a significant responsibility, that's something I'm going to come back to a few times today. I think that's very important. So the following examples that I've got for you today, these are all real examples of when using Solibri analysis, rules, or information takeoffs has resulted in a positive impact, either on cost or program. So that's the we're not getting any delays in actually building something. These exercises that I've completed over the past few years, they've benefited design managers, estimators, surveyors, planners, architects, design teams. A lot of these exercises was when I was working for a tier 1 contractor in the UK. But others have been when I've been working in consultancy. So that's an architectural practice. So hopefully there'll be something for everyone today. The other thing I'd like to underline is I've put in bold there that being reactive is critical. Sometimes we need a very quick response on an issue that's arisen on a project, be it a coordination issue or something similar. We don't always have time to develop and test a thorough analysis procedure. And discovering the requirements of design teams and so on was a sort of eye-opener for me. I only discovered where Solibri could help by sort of forcing myself into the design coordination process. So I sort of set foot out of the BIMosphere, if you want to call it that, where I was concentrating on fulfilling project objectives, like BIM objectives and so on. And I think that's really important. If BIM specialists are to discover productivity gains and so on, we can't be afraid of elbowing our way into meetings that we usually wouldn't be present at. And that's me doing that has actually provided value. So I'd encourage that. The other thing is, in the UK at least, that might mean instead of scheduling BIM specific meetings or clash detection workshops, that sort of thing, that's usually what I've seen on projects, at least in the UK. Instead of doing that, we need to just hijack existing events and scheduled meetings. So you're hijacking someone's design team meeting, for example. I think that's critical because you don't. We're trying to modernize the entire process, the entire design and build workflow. by having this sort of parallel BIM specific process, you know, we're just creating a separate process which just complicates things. So it's about modernizing the existing procedures rather than creating new ones. So this is my first example. This is something I'm keen to do as soon as appointments are made on a project. So this is early stage checks for when appointments are made, when your principal designers are on the job, and hopefully they've got some early stage BIM data for you to look at. Coordination is absolutely critical. If you have uncoordinated models, sorry, any other model-based activity you do, clash detection and so on, information takeoff, if it's location-based, anything you do like that is going to be redundant. You need to get coordination correct first time. So using Solibri, we build rule sets and information takeoffs to check model coordination. Now that's not just having a look at coordinates and making sure that they're correct. We're also ensuring levels are consistent across different disciplines, which can, if you're using IFC data, that can cause problems if it's not picked up early on. And we're also checking at the early stages that components are being correctly named and classified. We're not expecting, you know, Kobe data or anything like that at this stage, but we're just making sure that the information we get is sensible. It has at least some data inside it, and it's not just a lump of geometry that is of limited use to everyone. So I've got an example of a coordination issue on the next slide. Just before I move off this slide, though, I think it's worth mentioning the second point there: establishing proof of capability. That's something that we have to do in the ISO standards, 19650 suite of documents. And I think that's something that we can report on using software like Solibri more adequately now. Previously, when disciplines or anyone were seeking appointment on a project, you'd have to fill in a qualification questionnaire, right? And that would be put a tick in the box to say that you can provide coordinated model data. Well, actually, we can check that now. So what I like to do on projects is actually analyze and report on coordination, make sure that we can create a federated model at an early stage. By doing that, I'm ensuring the capability of our supply chain, and also that we're going to eliminate any problems that arise from poor coordination that arise in the future. If you don't catch it early on, it is a lot more difficult to sort out later. So going on to the example of that. Now, I've done a couple of screen captures rather than a live demonstration of Solibri because live technical demonstrations don't always go terribly well. But this is an example. This actually happened a few years ago. This is something that isn't always obvious during your sort of non-interrogative model fly arounds. On one project we had, again, fairly early on, we're talking sort of stage 3, REBA stage 3 for the UK. We had structural slab level in the model, the same height as the finished floor level. Now, like I say, you might not always pick that up if you're just slamming models together when you're federating them and you're just giving them a quick eyeballing and you're saying, okay, that looks about right. You know, structural slab and finished floor, the difference in measurement between them it can be quite small. But here you can see just there, we've identified using, I'll just play it again whilst I'm talking. We've done an information takeoff in Solibri that identifies components, slabs by discipline, and then gives us information about their top elevation. So yeah, I've just put a little note there. That's the short codes in Solibri are useful here, especially when you've got lots of models. But there you can see that we've got suspended floors at different heights. So that's something that we were able to neutralize quite early on, and thankfully, we didn't have to make adjustments when people were deep into the other processes, other design processes. I'll just move on to the next slide. Hang on. There we go. Just make sure that's the next slide. Yep. So going into some more specific coordination examples. So following on from completing your original sort of beginning of the project coordination checks, doing more information takeoffs. These are requests I had from design managers and people who are in the various task teams who were in the design process. Again, going back to my original point, I only sort of realized these things were an issue for people, for designers, just by being present in meetings and keeping my ears open for when an argument begins about something that's going wrong on a project, just working out if we can use Solibri to either get the information we need or to create a rule set to check whether something's correct or not. So some more specific coordination examples here. Again, this is sort of REBA stage 3, early stage 4. This is round about when that happens, design team meetings around that time. So the first one is checking ceiling heights. That resulted from a mechanical engineer he was busy trying to cram his services into the ceiling void. And then he discovered in a few areas, circulation areas, that the ceilings were at the wrong level. Now, the root cause of that was, probably time constraints on the poor person authoring the model, where, just a sort of blanket ceiling grid was put into place. But that wasn't actually what the design required. So this was discovered in a design team meeting. There was a bit of shouting, led to an expectation that a delay would be incurred whilst the models were reviewed, and then there'd be another delay while the drawings were updated. What I was able to do was, whilst we were in that meeting, we were able to just do a quick takeoff, again, of just elevations of ceilings, and that way we were able to pinpoint which ceilings were incorrect very quickly. So that's just saving a little bit of coordination time. But if you have that, excuse me, if you take that time saved and you spread it across everyone who needs to be involved in that coordination process, it can be quite the amount of time saved. And the other examples I've got there, just quickly, we're checking top of steels where we have an extension to an existing building. That was a request from a build manager. So by that point, the steels were going up on site, and they wanted assurance that the fabrication model, steelwork fabrication model, was correct, that everything was would correctly interface with the existing building. And a couple more from design and build managers. We've developed rule sets for checking spaces within column cases for the expansion of intumescent paint. And then another one, which was quite a specialist building, but we wanted checks to make sure that the height of fuel routes into an engine testing facility were within acceptable safety limits. Apparently that's not only just to prevent safety issues, it's also to prevent fuel theft, which was something I wasn't aware of. So yeah, instead of having to check a lot of drawings and schedules, creating an information takeoff in Solibri or a checking rule set, often in a meeting, reactively, in the time it takes to have a coffee break, it just means nobody goes back to their office after a meeting with extra work or a lot of extra work. So moving on to another exercise that I've done in the past for planners. Now this is for using models in construction simulation software. I believe the planners at the time I was working with were using Asta BIM and Synchro. but they wanted to create construction simulations. And what you can see here in the video is components were actually elevated at the, they're actually assigned to the incorrect level. I'll just play that again when I'm talking, just so you can see what's going on. So you can see that the information takeoff on the right there, it's a very simple thing to do in Solibri. It's just being aware of what people require. So you can see there the roof steel work is all fine. That's correctly assigned to the right story level. But there you have some parapet steel work and some other pieces that's actually assigned to the wrong level in the model. Now that's quite a heavy-handed example. I didn't have the original model there, so what you're seeing there is something I've knocked together. But we, even recently, that's something that I've seen in the past. Again, it's probably because model authors are, working against the clock. They may think, I've got to get this model out. I will just take the existing ground floor steelwork and I'll boost it up to the first floor, and that'll save me some time. They may forget to reassign it to the story. That caused a lot of problems for our planners in importing in creating a construction simulation, because of the way that they arrange the model in relation to Gantt charts and so on. It means that they want accurate levels, so they can show ground floor, first floor, second floor, roof steelwork going in one by one. If we don't have a correctly structured model, we don't get that. So by creating a rule set, we can then report on it, or sorry, an information takeoff, we can report on that and send it back to the authors and ask them to resolve it quickly, rather than having the planning team embark on a construction simulation exercise and then discovering it halfway through and missing a deadline as a result. Staying in a sort of contractor environment, I'm just trying to move on to my next slide here. There we go. This is a example of an information takeoff for an estimator. Once more, this is a straightforward Solibri exercise that my estimator just wasn't aware of. So this just came out of a conversation with an estimator who I just happened to be hot desking with. So I was watching him sitting there with a scale ruler and a calculator for half a day as he's working out steelwork lengths. And then after following a conversation, we're actually able to get him the data he needed in about half an hour. Creating estimated takeoffs, depending on the size of the project, can be quite a big time commitment. So half a day, maybe more. If you can erode that to half an hour, then you've got a happier estimator who's able to complete more work. He may be a little threatened about automation, but he just provides some reassurance about that. We're not trying to replace anyone. We're just trying to make your job easier. But again, that's something that you can roll out if you're a contractor, for instance. You can roll that out across all your projects, and the amount of resource requirements that you need to complete that task will nosedive. Oh, sorry. There we go. All right, now moving on to what is often considered the sort of bread and butter function of Solibri, which is clash detection. So this example, this is an example of an early stage clash detection exercise. So again, sort of stage 3, stage 4, we're doing these clash detection exercises. We get an architectural model, usually structural model, and then a mechanical and electrical model. You may get some plumbing and sprinkler stuff in there as well. Now, there's a tendency to sort of believe that we can develop one super rule set that we use for clash detection on all projects in Solibri. Whilst that's definitely a valid approach, I haven't always found it to be the best way of working on projects. The reason for that is speaking with design managers and other people who are involved in the design process, architects and so on. Again, barging into meetings that I'm not necessarily welcome at or invited to was a benefit here, because what it means is you can discover things that do need coordination, that your super rule set, your super clash rule set doesn't necessarily pick up on. So to give you an example of that, I remember being in one meeting where they needed to check the cable routes, so that's wall trunking, and wall fixed audio-visual equipment wasn't clashing. So that was something that we could build a simple rule set for in Solibri, but it wasn't something that my big clash detection rule set specifically looked for. So again, being sort of quite agile and reactive in how we're seeking and addressing clashes is crucial, and it has benefit to a lot of people. The example here, I think, is a plant room. So plant rooms always need a lot of scrutiny because they're a very busy place. Checking routes and so on, checking louver heights as well. That tends to be a dedicated clash detection exercise. That's a separate rule set where I'm taking louver heights and extract terminals and making sure that the levels are correct and making sure that they're not the frame of the louver isn't being interfered with by the service route. The reason for me recommending or giving that example is that specific check is it can indicate that an entire service route may need some attention. Again, with tight ceiling voids and so on, having to move an entire service route up and down or make a big adjustment to it, that can have a lot of implications on other services and other building features. So louvers and extracts are a good indicator that a service might need attention. So that's something you might want to take away with you. And then moving on to asset data validation. Now this is something that I'd like to do at stage 3. So we used to have information exchange milestones sort of enshrined in previous standards. They're kind of loose now, but I still like to use them. So the stage 3 milestone was checking that you've got space data in the model. So making sure that in this example, you can see Kobe data there. So that's making sure the right data is going into the right place. Now, I've only usually done that when there's been a requirement from, it usually comes from a customer representative, and that's proving assurances, essentially. So that is proving that project milestones that have been established are being met. We're not just filling models with Kobe data in a mad rush just before handover. That never happens. So yeah, just checking asset data. You may have other requirements beside Kobe. I'll get onto a couple of them later on, and you do need to check them. Again, depending on the type of building you're putting together, you might have, for instance, if you're doing a school, you might have classroom size requirements. And getting a takeoff of the spatial areas and volumes is something that we can check in Solibri as well. Now, recently, Solibri's released their BIM Coordination Plus extension, which contained a rule set to check fire safety measures in a design. I imagine some of you may have seen some of the presentations that have been done quite recently on that. But fire safety is a huge issue at the moment. In the UK especially, following the Grenfell disaster, we had new legislation, quite rightly, landing with us, and we have new requirements for fire safety and other types of safety. The example you can see here on the left demonstrates how distance between services and the edge of builders' work openings can be checked. Now, whilst I've been trying to get this work on projects, on live projects, I've actually discovered a few things that need to be done in order to get this, to get the most out of these rule sets. Now, first of all, there seems to be a systemic challenge, again, at least in the UK. These exercises need to be done as early as possible. So we're talking sort of mid to late stage, REBA stage 3. In the UK, I don't think I've ever had builders work openings available in a model until sort of mid to late stage 4, which isn't early enough to provide the best value for us. So I think a discussion needs to be had about the responsibility for modeling builders work openings and fire stopping products. Putting Solibri rule sets and information takeoffs aside, I think that's something that we need to address as an industry. We need this information sooner rather than later. We need builders work openings specifically. We need them early on. Maybe, and I know there's architects watching, a lot of architects watching, maybe architects have to do it early on. Sorry, architects, but maybe we can try and ease your burden some other way. But usually BWOs are in the mechanical model and they appear later on where they can't really provide as much value. So that's a discussion that we as professionals need to have, and we need to come to an agreement on. I'd also point out that getting the most value out of the fire safety rules in Solibri does require some extra asset data. For example, again, sorry architects, fire doors have to be classified as such. There's some other things as well, you know, so we need compartmentation in models, which you can do in Solibri, but there's things that you can do in model authoring packages that will sort of make that a lot, that process a lot faster. So things like compartmentation now are critical, where that data needs to be present in the model, where previously it could have just been a colored fill on a drawing. So if we're going to provide fire safety checks using BIM, then the process does need to change. So I'd just like you to be aware of that. And before we move on from fire safety, I'd just like to cover another aspect I've used Solibri for. And this wasn't actually using the BIM Coordination Plus extension. This is just using an information takeoff again. And what I was doing is I was extracting the location, size, and number of builders work holes. And the reason that was required was for adding into a fire compliance book, which is one of the things that we have to provide to prove assurance during a build. Once more, this is a requirement that just came about from discussions with build teams. So just gathering builders work information in the sort of traditional sense, where you're looking through drawings and you're looking through schedules, that can take quite a bit of time. Usually someone draws the short straw and spends, depending on the project size, you know, 1 or 2 days getting all that info together and into an Excel database. If we use a Solibri information takeoff, we can get that data pretty much straight away. So we've reduced the time taken for a task, and we've prevented any bottlenecks that arise in gathering that information. But yeah, worth mentioning that your models obviously have to be precise if that information is going to be reliable. Now, just going towards the last few slides, as you can probably see, these have sort of followed, the slides have sort of followed the life of a project from sort of early design heading towards completion. So these following slides are going to be about the exercises that I do sort of stage 4 and stage 5. So that is ongoing coordination checks. That is the big task that I often have when we get new task teams being appointed. So coordination and capability checks, as I mentioned previously, they are ongoing. It's not just something we do at the beginning of a project and forget about. Those capability checks happen, you know, across all stages. for specialist supply chain members. So you've got a few examples here. We've got a fabricator model on the left. Can be challenging to coordinate those depending on the software they originate from. We have sprinkler models. Again, they need particular attention, especially with making sure that they don't intersect with existing services. And then we have a precast model there on the right. And the challenge with precast models is ensuring that the formed penetrations match the services. So that, again, that's a separate rule set that we have to make, but it's something that's definitely worth doing, because manual coordination of that is quite difficult. It's quite an involved task. So yeah, doing more specialist clash detection exercises is what I'm sort of doing at stage 4, stage 5, as new disciplines are introduced. You can see from the list here, this is the stuff that that we've received in the past. Not all of them on all projects. The ones in bold are the models that I receive more often than not. But you do get some odd ones. For instance, manufacturing systems, you can get data from stuff like SolidWorks, IFCs and so on, and that does require a lot of attention to coordinate and make sure that that's going right. So if you get any of that stuff, it's really worth, ensuring coordination's correct. The further along the supply chain you go, the more the chances are you're going to encounter more specialist software. And we have to sort of absorb that. We can't, issue these edicts that command people to use a certain type of software. We're trying to democratize the BIM process. We're trying to make everyone collaborative. We can't be prescriptive. And let me just check what's next. Oh yeah, finally, just before moving on, at this point, when you have your clash detection reporting to do, I found it useful to start splitting that up into separate reports for disciplines or a couple of disciplines. That provides the people who need to see the information with only the information they need to see. So for instance, someone who is trying to coordinate a sprinkler route may not be interested in the same clashes that someone who is fitting FF&E stuff may be interested in. So separating those reports is can be quite beneficial to participants. And then finally, we've got validating and extracting your asset data at the end of the project. So again, the example here in front of us is Kobe data. For that, you can use the Solibri extension that's available. So that will actually validate and give you the Excel or XLS reports that you need to hand over to your customer. But crucially with Solibri, we can also construct our own takeoffs. To give you an example of that, I've been involved in manufacturing projects where we've had bespoke BIM data in there. There's been specific codes and references that relate to existing maintenance manuals, inventory systems, and that kind of thing. So being able to build an information takeoff rule set for that is something that's quite advantageous using Solibri. With some other packages, not to criticize them, I'm not going to name them, but there is a lot of focus on Kobe, and that's sometimes all you can do with some of the other tools out there, which is great if you have a Kobe deliverable, but if you have something specific, then you have to start looking at other solutions. But yeah, this can make Kobe, the process of extracting Kobe data, a lot easier. And again, following on from the slide earlier, having that validation going throughout the life of a project from REBA stage 3, checking spaces, checking generic components, then checking specific components, and then bringing in installation data. If we have that process going on from stage 3 onwards, we're not rushing to complete this stuff. We're all trying to get it done in one huge rush at the end of the project towards handover. where a lot of people have already got this, have already got a lot on. So yeah, it's about sort of spreading out the work required, I think is important. So that's all from me. I hope you found these examples useful. I also hope you've got some ideas about implementing something similar. I also hope that you'll join me in the efforts to sort of extend the benefits of BIM throughout the built environment. Aside from taking away some of the ideas about rule sets and information takeoffs today, again, I'd like to emphasize, as BIM specialists, or if you are a BIM specialist watching this, you know, we need to force our way into procedures and processes that we're not always usually present at. That has provided the best value for me. It's provided the best value for my colleagues, and it's provided a lot of cost savings and productivity gains for the organisations I've worked for. So it's just coming out of the BIMosphere a bit. You can get in touch with me at the address here. Always happy to talk about BIM or understanding implementation. And once again, thank you for your time. So I guess we'll do questions now, if there is any.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Simon. Please take Simon's contact if you wish to get in touch with him, or take a screenshot. And we will anyhow share with you the recording so you can also get it there. Thank you so much, Simon. This was very informative. And now we will get to our, yes, let's get to our questions. We've seen, I think some questions are mainly for Ken.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm here just to say hello. Yeah, it's nice. Everybody's saved the questions until the very end. So I was planning to be nice and organised, but they're coming in now. There's quite a few questions, and some are probably a bit from myself and a bit from Simon as well. But there's quite a few questions just about the formats, I suppose, that Revit support, that Solibri supports. One of the questions is how we deal with Revit models. And there's a few questions about IFC and common issues and bits and pieces there. So I suppose if I just start with just discussing what Solibri works with, how that works with other platforms, etc. And then Simon, feel free to jump in and add some comments and things. So I suppose the first thing is Solibri predominantly supports IFC file format. So IFC is the industry foundation class. It's an open format. It's been around for longer than Solibri, which is now approaching 30 years, or 25 years, 30 years, something like that, a long time. So IFC is the main format we support, which means we can take in models from virtually any platform that models and produces IFC files. So in terms of how we work with Revit models, we don't work directly with the RVT file, we work with the IFC that's exported from Revit, from ArchiCAD, from Vectorworks, from Allplan, from you name it, whatever the product happens to be. So we bring those files into Solibri, we federate them, which is where we combine them into a complete model that includes the various different disciplines and file types that Simon already mentioned, and then we coordinate those models and do the checking that we're going to do on that complete model. So we're getting the whole story and not just looking in isolation at maybe just the architectural model or just the structural model. So that's sort of one of the questions there. I don't know, is there anything you want to add to that, Simon? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think you've covered it. I mean, IFC, I think is as I'm committed to sort of open BIM, IFC is the open format for BIM data. So any BIM package is going to be able to export it, an IFC that is, and there may be a few bumps in the coordination process, but as I say, you can get your own sort of process established for that quite easily. There's a lot of information out there. but I think IFC is crucial for everyone to get involved with the BIM process.
I think that's a really good answer, because that pretty much picks up one of the next. I'm not answering questions directly, I'm trying to put them into a theme, but one of the next questions, the theme was, are there any common issues with dealing with IFC? And again, from our point of view, from our perspective at Solibri, we know that one of the main things that you need to be when you're working with IFC and when you're first setting up a project and you're first starting to work with new partners, etc., is the communication is vital. So you need to discuss what IFC format you're going to support, what content you're going to put into that model, so not just the geometry, but also the property sets and whatever other data is associated with it, and just talk, because we do get issues where models come in and somebody's modelled at sea level and somebody else is modelled at real world level, and all sorts of things like that. So that's, yeah, from our point of view, communication is the key thing there. But again, Simon, is there anything else you want to? Anything that you've found in the real world?
I'd fully agree with communication. That's something when you write your BIM execution plan, if you're responsible for that, talking to the people providing BIM data, seeing how they coordinate, is that's going to save you time when you actually receive models and you try and sort of federate them. The other thing is, I think using a belt and braces approach to coordination. So we have various different coordinate systems that we can use, but you can also do local coordination. So that can be as simple as putting a coordination cube. So that's a square meter sort of size cube, a grid line intersection that everyone has modeled. So that's your sort of backup coordination. So just having more than one a way of coordinating a model is ideal. Not everyone likes doing that, but it gives you a fallback option if you're really having trouble with someone who, for instance, people using SolidWorks and some other sort of stuff that's sort of just BIM adjacent. Sometimes they can have a bit of trouble with IFC.
Cool. Yeah. I've seen the cube idea. The one that I remember seeing was it was almost like slices of cake or slices of pizza, so they all came together at one point, and it made it quite nice and simple to point out if there was a particular slice missing. It was easy to identify who was at fault.
The other thing there is, sorry to interrupt, the other thing there is having coordination cubes at different levels as well. So it's not just an X and Y coordinate check, it's Z coordinates. You have a component that is a sort of gospel component at certain levels. So that can help eliminate coordination issues as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, perfect, cool. And then there's another sort of couple of questions that really are talking about how you communicate with the wider design team. We've not really touched on that. We've talked about meetings and things like that, but there's a number of different ways that this can be done through Solibri, whether it's through the BCF Live option, which allows us to connect out to the cloud and to one of the services that we can work with, and that allows you to share BCF files. So BCF, for those of you that don't know, is the BIM communication format, and it's just BIM collaboration format. It's again another open format that allows you to pass issues, and that includes like a title, a description, the GUID to the actual individual components that are related to the item, and snapshot, an actual image of what it looks like. So this allows you to pass these things backwards and forwards so that you can share this information freely and easily. Most of the platforms, there'll be some sort of online version of it, so anybody from anywhere with any browser on any device can see the items, comment on them, mark them up, do what they have to do. But it also connects clearly into Solibri because we're starting the process, but we can push that straight into the authoring tool. So when it comes to fixing things, you go into Revit, you go into ArchiCAD, into Vectorworks, Allplan, whatever it is, you can then open that BCF file see the items that are related to the issue, get your description, all the information gathered together, and then hopefully fix it easily to then reissue the revised version of the model, update the BCF, and you just communicate backwards and forwards that way. So BCF is the most common format. We can also do traditional formats like Excel spreadsheets, PDF reports, these sort of things. And we can manually transfer BCFs when we have secure environments that are not allowed to connect to the internet or to the web. Then we have other offline formats we can use as well. I don't know, again, Simon, do you have any comment to add on that? Because you've done way more of this in the real world than I've ever done.
No, BCF's great. I think you've covered everything. Site teams have always been quite positive about BCF as well, because it means that they can use a tablet device and use BCFs to inspect issues. So it's all logged. Again, they don't have to be connected to the internet necessarily, and they can identify issues or examine and compare what's being designed to what's been built, and they can do all that with gloves on. So yeah, they're quite happy.
Cool. Sorry, I'm just while you're talking, I'm reading through a couple of the next ones. There was one which is, what's the difference between Solibri and Navisworks? Have you used Navisworks, Simon? Is there anything you can say on that?
I mean, Navisworks, I haven't used it in a few years. I have had to use it when it's been a project requirement. That's usually because people are using Navisworks Freedom and so on to view federated models. I mean, I think I've nailed my sort of colours to the mast with Solibri. I think that it's just a more capable and you can do a lot more in Solibri, for instance, with fire checks and so on, safety checks, accessibility checks. So sorry if anyone's from Autodesk here today.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you could say that, because if we say it, you know, we work for Solibri, so obviously we work for Solibri. But I mean, looking at the cold hard facts, Solibri is open BIM, works with files that are generated by any platform anywhere and brought in through IFC. So predominantly we are open to receive models from anywhere. Navis is very much inside the Autodesk family, so it can open direct Revit files and create its own Navis files, etc. And I suppose the other big focus is Navis is very much on clash detection, whereas clash detection is one of 55 rules. The general intersection rule is one of 55 that ships with standard Solibri, but with the extensions that we offer free to customers, there's things like fire stopping, which adds another 16 rules that is very specifically focused on fire stopping resources. We have other bits and pieces in the pipeline coming up that's going to introduce more rules that do even more. So they are completely different products in many ways, although fundamentally they view models and allow you to look at models and do different things. But yeah, I think it's a difficult one without getting into too much detail, but hopefully that gives you a taster of what the differences are. And so while I'm talking, there is one sort of specific question that doesn't really fit with the rest, which is, so I think this is sort of get into specifics about one of the points you raised about the differences in clash detection between stage 3 and stage 4 and 5. To be honest, Bart, if you're still online, we'll probably come back to you specifically on that, because it's quite a detailed technical question, very much focused on one thing. So if it's okay, we'll ask Simon to drop you a quick line or back through us, whatever way it happens to be. But we'll come back to you separately on that one. Thanks. But I think that pretty much covers everything. And
yeah, I think we've covered most of the questions, Simon. But if anybody has more questions, we can still answer you offline. So just drop it in our questions section.
There was one question, sorry, just quickly,
Yes.
further up the list. It was just somebody asking about a user community. So it was just a quick, while everybody's online, just a quick mention of Solibri Society. If you do want to get involved with that side of things, there is society.solibri.com, and that's the Solibri Society. It's a user forum. There's stuff on there that talks about upcoming developments and things as well. There's opportunities to get involved with beta testing and other bits and pieces like that. So that was the only other bit really to pick up and drop in there. Thanks.
Yes, thank you for reminding us, Ken. So I will, during the follow-up email, I will send a link to our Solibri Society because we get asked about this often. Yes, so thank you, Simon and Ken. Thank you both for answering these questions. And it looks like we've covered almost all of the questions, but we will get back to you privately if we haven't yet answered your question online. I wanted to quickly remind you about our upcoming webinar. So please save the date for the 13th of December, where we talk about IDS and introduce you to it and how you can work with it with Solibri. So please save the date. And also, if you're a Finnish speaker, we have a webinar coming up in about an hour. So please join us for that one if you're tuning in from Finland. Yes, I want to thank you so much, Simon. This was a really great webinar. Thank you for all the information that you've provided us with. And thank you everyone for joining us today, and we hope to see you soon in our future webinars. Thank you very much,
everybody.
All right, have a great evening or day. See you soon. Bye-bye.